But death sucks for a lot of reasons, especially if you know the person in question that's no longer with us. But when it comes to entertainment business or our everyday life, when we lose somebody, we naturally want to go in our minds and think back, wow, I didn't know it at the time, but that was the last time I was going to talk to that person. Or we didn't know it at the time, but that was the last movie we're going to see that actor in. Or we didn't know it at the time, but that was the last album that band was ever going to release. And In Utero, I don't think anybody thought that when Nirvana dropped their third studio album, that was the last album the band would ever release. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, music lovers, especially my rock music lovers. Do me a favor, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so right now. Hit that button. That will absolutely help me and this channel grow. And I'll say it before and I'll say it again. That's why I'm here. For that and for you, the audience. You know, you think about something. Think back to 1989 when Nirvana dropped their debut album, Bleach, through Sub Pop Records. You know, that style of music, you know, it was one of two things. Either it just wasn't something the mainstream wanted, or it was something they weren't ready for. I mean, you had that heavily distorted guitar, the hard-hitting drums, and this graspingly voiced lead singer that could scream and you just didn't know what the hell he was saying sometimes. But it was just one of those things that you seen coming up, but you didn't know, where the hell is this going to go? But we all know it. 2 years after that, Nirvana would release their second studio album, Nevermind, and literally, they took out a pair of clippers and shaved off the hair of every hair metal, glam metal band and just completely shredded them. At the same time, they put all this adult contemporary music on the bench and told them, take a seat. I mean, it was an iconic moment when Nevermind came out. I mean, literally, you had iconic moments in history that it lived up to, which weren't many. You think about Bob Dylan at the Newport Folk Festival in 1965. That was the first time he played electric. And then you think about the Beatles when they first debuted on the Ed Sullivan Show, which, by the way, Nirvana paid tribute to in their In Bloom video. Awesome video, by the way. We all know that grunge movement just completely took over the world for a moment in time in rock music. And that moment spawned so many imitators. And I'm not sitting there saying that Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden are imitators. They were just as well rooted into that amazing moment like Nirvana. But Nirvana was definitely kings of that era as far as popularity and how their music pretty much put everybody out there on the forefront to have success. But it was huge success. And you have to ask yourselves, how the hell are you supposed to follow it up? Would your follow-up be as massive as what you just released? That's always the big question. Well, we know what Nirvana did. In 1993, they released In Utero. Another huge thing that Nirvana did with In Utero was changing music producers. Using Butch Vig on Nevermind was huge. I mean, he helped take that album to huge heights, obviously. And Butch Vig is one of the most iconic music producers in the business. But they brought in Steve Albini to be the producer on In Utero, which was kind of a weird decision in most people's eyes. But Steve Albini's huge in the music industry. I mean, he played in some big noise bands like Big Black and Rape Man. I mean, he did amazing things as a producer as well. I mean, very influential on the Pixies' 1988 debut album, Surfer Rosa. I mean, it was just a direction that they felt they had to go. Obviously, they wanted to kind of get themselves out of that grunge gutter, per se. Now, there was one thing on their mind, okay? They wanted to create something, well, that the world wasn't ready for. Kind of go back to their Bleach days, which it wasn't intentional then. They were already creating something that they wanted to create that the world wasn't ready for at the time, but unintentional. This time they wanted to go back that route. They want to put themselves back in that position. Can we create something different coming off of Nevermind? We don't want to do that again. What is something that the world is not ready for? I think Kurt had really a perfect sound in mind, and Albini was more than happy to let the guys do what they wanted to do in the studio, which is why I think he was the perfect producer for this album. You know, Kurt really wanted to change that guitar sound. There was a kind of a hallmark sound when it came to the grunge movement and the music. There was especially the commercial music. I mean, the music that was out there getting blasted on the radio. There was a certain style of guitar Kurt wanted to kind of shy away from that. You really got that when you heard songs like Milk It and Radio Friendly Unit Shifter. Awesome songs. And you really got to hear Kurt's drive to change, like these screaming speed metal type sound he had, especially in the song Tourette's. And then he was able to calm it back down with songs like Dumb and All Apologies. I mean, Kurt, I think he had a goal in mind when he wrote these songs, and he had a goal in mind when he got in the studio. And I think Steve Albini was the perfect producer to let him just do his thing. Two of the biggest commercial hits off of that album were All Apologies and Heart Shaped Box. Both reached #1 on the Billboard charts. But for me, Rape Me was another huge song on there, and obviously their SNL performance where they sing that song was huge. It was insane to me that they let them perform it, and it was an iconic performance. But no doubt, those singles off that album were amazing. Every song off that album is amazing, and you really see Kurt's progression in style, his progression in state of mind, and it's just, he was in a different place. But the fact that heroin addiction had a grip on him, you can't get away from that. You couldn't run away, and I don't think Kurt had any desire to. I think he was content with where he was at in his habits, but he still had a brilliant mind that could write brilliant songs. And that's what this album was. In Utero was released in September of 1993, but there's a lot out there that will argue, and it's hard to argue back with them, that the November 1993 performance, the MTV Unplugged live performance in New York City, is kind of the band's farewell statement. And, I can kind of be steered to believe that as well. It was a weird time for Nirvana. That performance was amazing. Really, it's always hindsight. If you go back and look at that, the last song that they played, All Apologies, it's kind of like you kind of had a feeling that it was the end of something. You didn't know what, but it was the end. And in hindsight, you can look back now and we know that was the end. Obviously, they would go on and still tour overseas, and we know what happened. Cobain goes in the hospital, alcohol, pills, makes it back to the States, enters rehab, leaves rehab, and we know what happened after that. They find his body in April of 1994, and we had lost him. That was it. That was definitely the end of Nirvana. There was no turning back after that. But, that live performance Unplugged session is one of the best in history ever. As far as all the MTV Unplugged sessions go, that was one of the best. And it's not a big debate. I think most people will agree. But In Utero as an album, everything that was behind that, the intention of changing a little bit of the direction, get out of that grunge light, that spotlight that was on them in a lot of bands at that time. The process of writing for In Utero, where they wrote the In Utero house in the Hollywood Hills where Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain lived. It's an iconic home, and there's people that have went there on YouTube, their channel. They go there and they go in the house, and I can imagine going in that house, the aura that you probably feel walking in there, knowing what went on there in the writing of that album. That's crazy. And honestly, that's the direction I'd like to go with this channel. One day I'd like to do more than just sit in my studio and talk to you. I'd like to go out and show you the places firsthand. As I'm talking about it, be there. That is a long-term goal for this channel, so if you stay tuned, that'll eventually be the direction we go. But yeah, In Utero is a classic album. I believe that they did the exact thing they probably wanted to do. At least Kurt wanted to do. They went in a direction that obviously was a successful album. Not as successful as Nevermind, but it was huge, huge. And obviously that was the final album we would get from the band Nirvana. And you know what? I think they did a damn good job. I think the world would agree. I think you will agree as well. But man, I think that's just an amazing story behind an amazing album. So many different things were going on at that time, and we just didn't know that less than a year later, after that album's release, we would lose one of the greatest lyricists of all time. I'd say the Jim Morrison of our time, at least the most recent one. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Go out there, take care of your friends and family. Do something amazing. Have your In Utero moment. Do something great. Even when people aren't ready for it. Make them ready for it. Till next time, take care of yourself. I'm out.